Hi, and welcome to the Week 10 review episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Paul is out in Berlin, I believe, or somewhere in Germany, certainly, enjoying his week. So it's just me and Joe this week. Joe, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It was a good week 10. A lot of interesting games, a lot of teams where it's like, oh, they might not be as what we actually think before the season. It's like there's not many weeks to actually turn it around. And obviously, we'll probably get onto it later on with some big teams making changes. So it was, certainly an interesting week for the NFL.
Yeah, Niners don't even have a losing streak anymore, so it's really a big week for everybody.
Happy days. Yeah.
And one of the big premier matchups of the week we thought going in, Ravens-Browns, and it, I think, very much delivered on what we thought it was going to be. Had some moments to start the game, obviously within 20 seconds, the Ravens were a touchdown to the good thanks to the defense. But how did you see the game?
Yeah, it feels like another Baltimore loss, but they shouldn't have lost. Like, I understand, it's a bit different to the other two, because the other two, they felt like they dominated that game, and they somehow lost. I think the Browns actually they obviously outscored them, but they had more yards and more attacking play. But it still felt, watching that game, I never felt that the Browns were going to win it. I was like, all the way through, and I've just been looking at ESPN now. So from, like you said, from that interception, it got to the fourth quarter, where I know it's win predictability, which, probability, which can be a lot of bollocks. But it wasn't until the fourth quarter that it was still 62% Ravens. Before that, it was around 90 and 80 all the way through the game. And it just felt like, watching that, it was like, oh, the Browns scored, but then the Ravens would just go up and, get another 2 touchdown lead, and it just felt like, oh, they're simply going to win it. And then it just feels like, I think Lamar's had a good year, but he's still making like 1 or 2 mistakes, which I think is like costing them. And that into the pick six, I feel like that changed the game, and it felt like he just stalled everything, and it just changed it. Yeah, still can't believe the Browns won. Yeah, I still can't believe the Browns won, even though they probably they had more yards and everything. Because it just felt like comfortable. I think I messaged in the group saying, "Well, who bets against the Ravens at home against?" And then it was one of my weird things where I was like, "Oh, the Browns are going to go like a field goal to win it. Like, how the hell has this happened all the way?" And it's just like it's tricky.
Yeah. It just, like you say, it's just classic Ravens this year, where I don't know how they've lost that game. I was impressed with the Browns in the second half, especially. They seem to be getting more physical, seem to be taking it a bit more personal, to quote prime Deion Sanders, where the rookie wide receiver Cedric Tillman laid that big block on Kyle Von Noy. I don't know if you've seen that, and then kind of like stood over him. And I thought, this is a team who maybe are getting a bit more Cleveland, I think, is how, it's how I expect a Cleveland team to, I expect a Cleveland team to be pitifully bad. But if I expect them to be good, it's going to be physical and, tough guy football. So it was kind of good to see them get back to that. Deshaun Watson in the second half as well was very reserved. I don't remember the ball going deep once. It seemed to be all like, take what's there, take what's there, take what's there. And it worked out for them. But again, it felt like the Ravens kind of let them have what they could get. And that was enough for the Browns to sneak the game. It was, I do feel like the Ravens are going to be real disappointed with this one, because any loss is a big loss, but it's another division one, and that AFC North is up for grabs once again. And it kind of felt like they were in such a great position to, 5 minutes into this game, they were 13 points up, and, division's there for the taking. And now they lose, got a tough Thursday night game against Cincinnati. What's next for the Ravens? And
I was going to say, like, realistically, this should be 10-0 when you look at the 3 losses. Yeah. They shouldn't have lost all 3 of them. If they feel like the team where the 3, it's weird saying, because they're still 7-3, and it's still good. Yeah. But the 3 losses are some of the worst losses this year, where they should have beat each team. They should be 10-0. And if they beat the Browns, the Browns are now on 6-3, but they would have been 5-4. They would have been 8-3. You're like, well, that's one team done. You beat them home and away.
Yep.
So to let them come back and sneak it, I feel like last week I was saying I feel like the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the NFL. But then results like this is like, can they do this? They'll not be able to do this in the playoffs. You see teams like the Eagles or even like the Chiefs, which I never have lost, a couple like each team 1-2, but they're not. This seems like a kind of team where if they're on an off day, they still win. Yeah. Ravens are either feel like they have to pummel them, better team hands down, or they still lose games where they're better than the team and still lose. Like it feels like the other teams have that, that DNA where if it's not going well, they'll still get a victory. And it makes me a bit concerned with how the playoffs are going to go with the Ravens. I still think they're still one of the best teams, and they're still, but they're going to this on Thursday, which we'll talk about later. And if they lose that, then they could be. They're in real trouble when you look at the other teams. Because I was looking at the Browns. If you can flip on the Browns, the Browns next few games. I know they've got the Steelers next week, which is obviously a big game.
Yeah,
but going forward after that, Broncos, Rams, Jags, Bears, Texans, Jets, Bengals. There's at least 5. You could easily see them winning 5 wins there, and that gets them to 11 wins.
And when we look,
it just feels like
Steelers have been outmatched in every single game they've played, and they're half a game behind Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Baltimore have been, for 90% of the season, 95% of the season, probably the best team in the NFL, and they're half a game ahead of, the Browns and the Steelers. It's not quite, it doesn't quite track. And to your point about the win percentage, I've seen earlier or late Sunday night, yesterday maybe, every one of their games is exactly the same that they've lost. It is 80, 90% Ravens, 100% the other team with 2 minutes to go. I do not know how they're doing it. And I've seen another great start. I've got it up, actually. Let me credit the person. Editorial researcher for NFL Media, Dante Koplowitz-Fleming. Least time spent trailing the first 10 games of the season last 40 years. The 84 Dolphins trailed for 14 minutes 46. The 98 Broncos trailed for 27 minutes. The 2023 Ravens trailed for 28 minutes 46. The other two won all 10 games. The Ravens they're the only one in the top 5 who aren't unbeaten. They've somehow lost 3 games despite only trailing all season for less than 30 minutes. It is staggering. And I kind of feel like, again, I don't want to put them in the same bracket as last year's Vikings team, but, the Vikings won so many close games last year and lost big games. And it kind of feels like that luck runs out the wrong way for you come playoff time. And, like you touched on there, what comes of the Ravens come playoff time, I'd be less confident in them than the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Niners, maybe even the Cowboys, of just teams that can get it done. Because, winning's contagious, but so is losing close games. Mm-hmm. And as much as Lamar's certainly one of my 2 or 3
and they did it last
players.
year as well, didn't they?
Yeah, one of my favorite players in the NFL, but it feels like there's another gear there that just isn't quite being ticked. I think one of the things this week as well, Keaton Mitchell had a great game per touch, but they asked Harbaugh about it, and it was maybe we should have got him more involved. It's maybe rather than churning it up the gut with Gus Edwards, maybe get it to an explosive playmaker. He's not somebody you want to get the ball 15 times a game to, but get him in space a few times and get 10 yards and keep that ball moving. It just feels like a loss that is, in another division as well, you could get away with it a little more, I think. If you're 7-3 in the AFC South and there's no Jaguars, you'd be pretty confident, though, we're still going to close the division. Doesn't matter too much. But here, it's, potentially
and I think they're still going to, and I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I think, this kind of losses, because when you look at like you said, their record and everything, and like I mentioned previously, last year they did the same as well. It feels like it's becoming a trend with the Ravens, where last year I think I can't remember the stats, but I know they had a few 4 quarter leads slip by as well, and they could have the number 1 seed because the Chiefs not playing great. I know they've only lost 1 or 2, but they could be in it. And now it's just because when you look at their next few games, you're like, oh. They've got Bengals, obviously, first. Then they've got the Chargers. Then the Rams, which they should be. But then they've got Jags, 49ers, Dolphins, Steelers. So, start of the year, you would say that at least 3 if maybe even 5 of them teams could make the playoffs. Maybe it's just the Rams, really, which is the only team who haven't got a chance. So, compare that to the Browns next record. You go to the Browns are probably right now the favorite to actually get above Baltimore in terms of seeding. And when you see both teams playing, I still think the Ravens are the better team overall. Like you said, I think they just have that DNA. And the flip side to the Browns, you're still not super impressed with Watson. I'm still not like he's a quarterback, like a top 5 quarterback, we should have got all that money and all that draft pick. But they're winning mainly because of the defense, and that can take you pretty far. And it feels like as long as Watson doesn't make too many mistakes, then they can win these kind of games. So I think they're looking good. And because he'll probably be listening, and he'll probably shout at us for not shouting. I'll give a shout out to Paul because he was the only one who picked the Browns to actually cover. I think get him in a bet as well. So go give a shout out because I just thought the Ravens would just steamroll them just because I just don't trust Watson. I just don't think he's a top 10 quarterback this year. So
and
you give it to them, and
if we're showing our little bets and stuff, like I had the Ravens defense to score a touchdown, and before I even realized games had started, really, because I was half watching Chelsea City, waiting for red zone to start. It's like, oh, your bet's already cashed. Like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. But it's because I thought the Ravens will get pressure on him, and Watson's been so bad under pressure this year. So that's why I went with the Ravens minus 6.5 was it? It was around the touchdown. I thought they'd cover that, and then, like I said, they were up 13 points with 5 minutes into the game. It's like, oh, easy street. This is Ravens in a big game once again. They've destroyed the Lions, destroyed the Seahawks, a couple of fluke losses, but this is the best team in football, no problem. And turns out problem. That Browns defense keeps you in games, and I think the game plan in the second half from Kevin Stefanski to just keep things short and take what's there and just keep going down the field obviously worked out for them. Ravens defense didn't step up to it, and lost another close one from ahead. I did see a stat over the weekend as well. I can't find it to reference it right now, but since the start of last season, the only coach to blow more 10-point leads than Josh McDaniels is John Harbaugh, which feels stunning because that does not feel very Ravens. I would say that is not so Ravens. I was stunned by that because they do not. It's not in the Baltimore DNA. That to me, again, it's an AFC North team. They're hard. They grind things out. They do not blow 10-point leads on the regular, but this one does.
Yeah, I wonder if it always feels like sometimes with the Ravens, where it feels too easy for them, and then suddenly they just stop doing the things what works, and then suddenly, the team gets touchdown, and then they go 3 now, then the team gets a few, and it's like, they're within one, and the Ravens have just stopped doing what they're doing, and then they just can't turn it back on again. It feels like they always just. It's probably not the case, but it just feels like watching it. Like some games, it just looks easy for them, and then suddenly it'll just go super hard. So like I said, the Thursday night makes it even more important now, which we'll talk about later. But
a rare Thursday night big game. I can't wait. When you compare to what we had last week, when even Charlie wouldn't take his treat to associate himself with the game. I'm sure he's going to be psyched for this week. Might have to get him a mini steak or something to show the difference between Bears, Panthers, and Ravens, Bengals. Anyway, enough AFC North for now. One of the games of the season, I would dare say. Chargers on Dolphins week 1, which was a banger, and Chargers Lions once again. I thought, just an incredible game to follow and watch and catch highlights of. Dan Campbell is most Dan Campbell. And Lions come out 41-38 winners over the Chargers. I just thought incredible performance and just a total difference between two head coaches. Brandon Staley's kind of looks a little more introverted. I don't say wimpy on the sideline, but compared to Dan Campbell, certainly. And on the other side, you've got Dan Campbell doing whatever he wants, biting kneecaps, going for multiple 4th downs. I just thought it was an incredible performance from both teams, really. Very fun game to watch. Well, what did you think of it, Joe?
Yeah, similar. Like I said, it was a fun game in terms of, I think it was just like at one point it was just like touchdown, and there was like no defense whatsoever.
Yeah.
You got to be impressed with, you got to be impressed with both teams. I think, well, especially on offense, that both teams, looked it great. Goff going back to LA and showing who he is. Seth Brown stepping up into the top tier of wide receivers. I think everyone knew he was a great receiver, but I think he's getting there. Top 10, top 5 kind of wide receiver, and because I think he's doing it on his own as well. That he's really the only true good wide receiver there. And on the flip side, you've got Keenan Allen, who's having a monster season as well, who's doing it on his own. So it just feels like it's good for. I think great for the Lions again. They just need to just keep winning. I feel like that division's sewn up. Obviously, the Vikings have come back into it a little bit, but I still feel it's the Lions to lose, and I don't think they'll lose it just looking at their schedule. A little bit worrying in terms of like the defense. I wonder if the injuries are catching up. I know they're playing a good Chargers. Well, I say good Chargers offense. They've been a bit most of the year. So it's a bit worrying that the last 5 drives all went for touchdowns, and basically Detroit had one more possession, so they got the field goal with obviously Dan Campbell's huge decision to go on 4th down at that point, and that's you love that as a coach, and I think it's a great decision because the defense wasn't playing well that I thought I'll trust my offense to do this. So in terms of it's a bit worrying if you're playing like a better solid team who's actually got a good defense, but I feel like with defense, how the lines have been, it could be like one game being great, one game being not so good. So I feel like they can make changes and improve that way. But with the Chargers, it feels like it's either have a great defense performance or they have a great offense performance. They just can't put it both together.
Yeah.
And I think it's worrying when your head coach is supposed to be a defensive coordinator and a mastermind, and obviously got to hide the same time as Dan Campbell. And it's just like, it feels like they're going in the opposite directions at the minute. And I just feel like the player, the one of the most disappointing teams this year, the Chargers. It's just 4-5.
3rd in the division.
Yeah, I'm just like looking at the schedule. Well, they've still got the Packers, Ravens, Patriots, Broncos, Raiders, Bills, Broncos, Chiefs. So,
all winnable, but they're all losable. I mean, other than the Patriots, I dare say. But they're pretty much all losable too, because they don't, like you said, they're not. One side of the ball will turn up and the other won't. That's not a category for success, recipe for success in the NFL.
Yeah, so I can see like 5 wins from the next 8. They might get 6, but so 5 wins will get them to 9, and it feels like how the AFC North's going, how even the AFC South's going. I don't know if 9 is going to be enough.
I agree.
To get there. It's going to be close because I think, obviously the AFC North. I think the Steelers have got coming up the Browns and the Bengals. So obviously they're going to take wins and losses away from each other. But you still got obviously the Bills are not doing as good as advertised, but still, the 4-5, and it just feels like they just can't get together. And it's they're one of them weird teams where you're just waiting for them to be good, but then it's like now in week 10, it's like, are they actually a good team, or they're just
what's that?
They've got great players, but it's just
it's like not
as
big as some of the parts.
Yeah, it feels like it feels like the offense. I know they've had the injuries, obviously. Yeah, they've had the injuries, but still, you feel like you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, potentially. I know people can argue with that, but it's just can't put together. I think they just need a new head coach, and I just hope they actually go with someone who's. Yeah, I just hope they just don't go for a boring one. There is like people out there with that team. I feel like they could be really fun and just get like a decent defense and actually get like a defensive coordinator who's just his whole job is just to coach that defense, similar to how Miami's doing. And I know the defense is not amazing, but that's a transition they need to go on instead of just exactly. And it's
I think that's how they will go
the Lions. Yeah,
because I think quite often is where where you have you have an offensive guru as head coach, and then your next one's normally defensive coach. Or if you have a bastard, your next one's a man manager. So I think it's going to be, Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick in Houston. I would expect one of those two to be like top of the list. And again, it could be some college guy. I don't track college especially well. But But I would expect to be one of the offensive guru types that is their next head coach. And I can't wait as someone who loves Justin Herbert. And we'll certainly have him in that list of the top quarterbacks in the league, whatever Brandon Staley tries to do to him.
Do you not think because they're a cheap organization, they'll just get the OC and just bring him up? What's his name now?
Kellen Moore.
Kellen Moore. Do you think they'll just like, oh, well, if they have like end of the season, they start having these kind of offensive kind of games, that's a safe pick for them. But then 2 years down the line, they're like, oh, they need to get someone else.
I could well see it, yeah. It just didn't come to mind because their offense hasn't been good, but that's a great thought because you could well see that as well as part of the hiring process as well because, come along and, you'll be extra considered for the head coaching job. And I also like just on a, revenge game, narrative street, whatever, I love the idea of Eric Bieniemy going and getting it if Ron Rivera doesn't get sacked in Washington. I think he will. I think Bieniemy will be the next coach in Washington, but I just love the idea of like being at the Chiefs all them years and then he's the next Chargers head coach. I think that'd be a great off-season narrative.
Yeah, 100%. And just on the lines, I'll just finish on like, I know I keep going through some schedules, but we're at that point in the season. But they've got like Bears, Packers, Saints, Bears, Broncos, Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings. Obviously, the Vikings are doing a lot better now, but realistically, they're in it for the number one seed. They're only one game behind the Eagles, and the Eagles have got a few tough games coming
They've
up.
got a brutal
so we could be seeing the NFC, running through Detroit for the first time.
And I think that'd be really important too, because that's it.
Yeah.
Then you've got it in the dome. You don't need to worry about going outside. Jared Goff's so much better at home / in a dome. So I think that'd be huge. If they could get that number one seed, that'd be huge for them, I think.
But I also think as a 49ers fan, than if you're a Cowboys fan, I'd prefer them to be number one seed than the Eagles, just because I think it'll be harder to beat the Eagles in their place than it would be to the Lions. But, you got to give it to them. The start of the season, it was one of them teams where they're just going to do what the Lions do. They had one of the biggest expectations in the league, just because how rubbish they've been and how they ended last year. So you got to give it to Derek Campbell and the rest of the squad, just that they've actually delivered and delivered with ease most of the game. So give it to them.
Yeah, other than that Ravens game, they've looked great all season from week one. That Thursday night opener, just incredible vibes and. Yeah, I'd obviously I'd rather them be the number one seed than the Eagles anyway, but just like I'd love to see them get number one seed. Like if Dallas aren't going to win the Super Bowl, send the Lions, please. It'd be they've earned it over
100%
every year of suffering they've had. I just wanted to shout out one little stat. You mentioned Keenan Allen's taking the receiving work on his back. I'm on Ross Brown doing the same. Those two actually lead the NFL in receptions per game at 8.1. Obviously not everyone's played the same amount of games, so the target totals are a little skewed for certain players. But both got 8.1. Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase at 7.7, tied for third. I just thought that was incredible because they've both really had incredible seasons, and it's not like they've gone unnoticed certainly, but they don't get brought up in the discussion of the best receivers in the NFL. Justin Jefferson, Chase, Hill, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, etc. But I think they're comfortably in that top 10 and maybe do go a little unnoticed relative to what they do on the field.
And I also want to shout out, I can't remember what his name was. We had a guy on here who was a Detroit fan in the preview.
Yeah.
And he talked about the backfield, about getting Gibbs and Montgomery. And I remember I think both of us were like, oh, Montgomery didn't do anything. It was just a guy with Bears. Like, why have they blown up that backfield, which had so much success? But
Montgomery is real good.
Yeah, Montgomery and Gibbs are better than advertised, and they've improved their running game. And, when you think about who has a better 1-2 punch, really, it's they're certainly going to be in the conversation. So the fact that the GM was like, oh, we had Jamal Williams who had the record of TDs and all that kind of stuff, well, let's blow it up and get these two of us in. Obviously helps having a good offensive line, but because you got to give it to him, because Gibbs is certainly showing the last few games why he was taken so high, and it's actually super positive for them.
And that Montgomery long touchdown run, obviously, any 75-yard touchdown run's going to look great, but I just loved Montgomery's little juke move at midfield where I don't quite know how he did it, but he seemed to juke two players out of their shoes 20 yards into a run and then went the rest of the 50 yards to the end zone. I thought it was, if you told me that David Montgomery was going to have a 75-yard touchdown run, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a 1-yard touchdown run in this game, I would be very sure that you'd got them mixed up because it doesn't quite track, but Again, Ben Johnson's getting the best out of his players. Dan Campbell's getting the best out of his players. Go Detroit. There was also, I feel like we're doing a stat off here with one after the other, but 8 out of 9 fourth downs converted in this game, which I have no idea how that stacks up to other performances. So it's certainly not a stat, but I just thought that was, for as much as I throw at Brandon Staley for being uninspiring and not a great head coach ultimately, I do appreciate that he has the bollocks to go for it on fourth down an awful lot. I often disagree with his play calls rather than the decision to go for it. But between him and Dan Campbell, I just thought this was a real onions off of you're going for fourth down. We're going for 2 fourth downs on this drive. Don't you worry. We could kick a field goal and probably win the game, but my defense isn't playing well. I'm just going to go for another fourth down. We'll convert it. We're not worried about it. I just thought it was brilliant.
Just needs to go. Yeah, so just seeing how the biggest ball is, just go in the back and have a measurement, guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to compete with Dan Campbell in that regard. No. Being Brandon Staley, exactly. No problem. Charlie will tee off with Brandon Staley, and he's been neutered 2 years. But Dan Campbell, no thanks. No, thank you.
Certainly
no. And from one glorious sunshine game to another, the 49ers bounce back, going down to Florida, down to Jacksonville, and just stomped the Jags, right? I mean, what score did we end up with here? 34-3. Joe, anything to say other than the score?
Yeah, this... oh, you know what? It was obviously it started off well. It's always nice to get a touchdown on the first drive. It felt like when they went 5-0 to begin with, I think they were the best team in the league for scoring on the opening drive. And yeah, just from that drive and obviously in Jacksonville's first view, and it was we actually might be comfortably, this could be a nice day happening here. I don't know if you've seen the first touchdown that Purdy throw. It was I think
what is
Shanahan
he doing?
said that's probably one of his worst decisions. Yeah, one of his worst decisions he's ever made. But somehow he managed to pinpoint it to Ayuk there, and he was like, "Oh, I think I had money." Well, one of my bets didn't come in, but I did have Ayuk touchdown, so I was like, "Oh, that's happy days," because I just fancied Ayuk that day. But yeah, I think the defense finally stepped up. I think Steve Wilkes obviously being on the sideline somehow makes a massive difference. It feels like that bye helped getting some players fit. Obviously, getting Debo back, getting Williams back. And I think Greenlaw looked healthy as well. And I think he is one of them Jenga pieces where he's not a superstar there, but it helps everyone around him. So Warner plays better when Greenlaw's at his best. So I think, and he's just looked injured. He's played through because he's just an absolute madman. But he's played through a lot of the injuries and it just looked healthy for the first time this week. And I think that helped. And obviously Bosa looked good. Chase Young had a few pressures as well. So I think overall, it was a great game. I think there was a nervousness around just before halftime. It was still 10-3, and there was a few Jacksonville going to end up getting a touchdown here and make it closer. But obviously they got the field goal at the end of the half, and then
I think that one just snuck in too, right?
Touchdown just after the second half. I think that. Yeah, I think it was his third though, because Doug Peterson called 2 timeouts. Yeah. So he called one, then he called another one, and then he got flagged for that because he can't call 2 timeouts. So it nearly, the third time, nearly got him. But then, that Kittle touchdown felt like he settled the game down. It felt like it was breeze on that. And I saw, apparently, Jacksonville's, some broadcasters or some reporters out there were saying, it was all because of, Purdy's help. That's why he won the game. But when you see that pass to Kittle, that was just unbelievable. He just dropped in a basket just over the defender's head. It's just come on. And he was just about to get absolutely blown up as well by Walker. So I think good all-round game. I think everyone came out fit and healthy. There was a few I think Bosa went down at one point. Armstead went down at one point. But I think everyone. So it was certainly, it improved my feelings towards them. And I think beating Jags, because I was always nervous because Jags are one of them teams that's they could be a good team, Super Bowl kind of team. But then you see this kind of performance, you're like, are they actually that kind of team? Yeah. It's I'm still not quite sure where they are. Yeah, and I wonder if the defense has been great this year, but is it just against bad offenses, or they're just some of that kind of luck where they get that kind of thing? But I don't know if you've seen what Richard Sherman put on Twitter. And I'm curious what you thought about that. So basically about Trevor Lawrence, that he hasn't lived up to the hype that he came into the league. as going to be a generational talent, like one of the best in the league, and is he even top 10 at this point? Or if he is, it's going to be a high top 10, not a top 5, which he was promised. And it's been obviously you can discard the first year, but it's been a year and a half after that, and he's not really taken that step, and he's not shown that true potential. And is he like one of them quarterbacks which people are overrate just because how he was coming to college and they're not actually watching the games and he's not performing that way? Because I think he is starting to cost the team some games, or like his performance has not been up to snuff.
Yeah, this was woeful this week. Richard Sherman, I don't think Richard Sherman's too reactionary for like talking heads type of, I know he's obviously a legendary player, but like some of them come out and are just like real hot takey. Emmanuel Ocho, I think his name is, who's just like, I have him blocked on Twitter because it's just always junk. But Richard Sherman, I think he very much knows the game, and I fully agree, truthfully. I love the idea of Lawrence coming out again. I don't track college too much, but like when it's a big quarterbacks, I get excited and watch them, and you can see that they're going to be great. Lawrence, I mean, Caleb Williams before this year, I would dare say as well. But Andrew Luck was the previous one to Lawrence, so it was just like, this guy's going to be great. Like, there's not any kind of dispute on it, and he has been underwhelming. Like, I don't really think I'd struggle to anyone to debate otherwise. One great 8-game run to end last year, 9-game run to end last year, and myself included, like, just kind of assumed that was how this year would go as well. Iden was one of my, again, I don't know what number I've had him, but he'd been one of, I would say, top 10 quarterbacks going into this year, just on expectation. Play quarterbacks that I'd want for the next 5 years, he would certainly be in my top 10. Now, I don't know. I mean, who would you rather have today, knowing that you've got to sign Trevor Lawrence before, CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence? It's hilarious that that's a decision, considering, in August, you'd have laughed at the idea of Trevor Lawrence versus any of the quarterbacks in this draft class of being in his stratosphere. Never mind, I think there's a very strong argument that you would just take CJ Stroud because he's played better his entire career versus Lawrence's one half season.
Yeah, because like even at end of last year, like he played well and he looked like a good quarterback, but he was still one of them like, he needs to take another step to be who we thought he was. Like you said, he came into the league, like Andrew Luck, and he was like that kind of like the Jags. This is a no-brainer. This quarterback's going to be top 5 all the time. Is going to be one of the greats, and he's just another quarterback right now.
Yeah,
I think he's still got the potential. I think he's still got all the tools, but there's something not quite there. Where is he actually going to reach? Is he going to be like an Eli Manning, where you still win two Super Bowls and have 2 great runs, and he's going to be a legend in the Giants franchise for all time? But it's one of them. Is he is like a borderline Hall of Famer? If you take, I know you can't really take out the 2 Super Bowls because you can't really do that in a career. But all the other seasons, he wasn't. It was never like, he's definitely a top 5 quarterback. There was always 5 quarterbacks better than him.
Yeah, if he has those in the exact same career, but they just lose both those Super Bowls, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. He's not in the Hall of Fame conversation.
Yeah,
not close.
So is Trevor Lawrence going to be that kind of quarterback? But we thought he was going to be, like a Manning, that kind of like unbelievable, like
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning. Yeah, so it's going to be like a bit of a Peyton, where you're like, no brainer, sorted for the next 15 years, going to be the top 5 every year, sorted, and he's just not quite being that. And I think, especially this year, like, I know they're still 6-3, so they're still having a good year. But it feels like the defense has won quite a few games, and with the division they're in, like, they should win it comfortably, but still, it's
to me, as well as like he is playing poorly as well. Like it's just the lack of progression. Mm-hmm. Like you say, you expect like his foot to go on the gas a little. Ended last year well, and you think, well, now they're really going to push on. Calvin Ridley's here, and Calvin Ridley hasn't played well. I'm not going to say he has, but like he's not a negative on the team. Certainly, Christian Kirk's another year into the system. Evan Ingram's another year into the system. It just feels like I say I want to press the panic. Like I think he could still be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that's out of the question. Yeah. But it just
like the worst is maybe like number 12 or 11. So it could be like if I rank him, he could still be top 10, like 9 or 10. But
in like fantasy points, which isn't the perfect metric, obviously. In points per game, he's around like Deshaun Watson, Desmond Ridder, Geno, Derek Carr. And that's how he's been this year. Like, again, it's not a perfect metric because rushing's weighted heavily in fantasy. But, I mean, that also isn't like Trevor Lawrence. That isn't like Lamar Jackson type runners I'm reading off there who are just getting rushing points. Like, they're all kind of quarterbacks who are having underwhelming years passing the ball. And he shouldn't be in that stratosphere. He should be in that, like I said, 12 is kind of like a low mark for him, I would expect. Going into this year, I would think 99% of football fans would prefer Lawrence over like Dak Prescott, who's had a great second half of this season so far. And yeah, or somebody like Brock Purdy even. Like, what does Lawrence do better than Brock Purdy right now?
Same draft as well, I think. Was the same draft?
No, Purdy was a year later.
One after, yeah.
I mean, that 2021 draft class for quarterbacks, you had Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Justin Fields. And it was like, this is going to be the revitalization of the quarterback position in the NFL. Because, like, I mean, Mac Jones, I think, was always going to be kind of, at best, absolute best Kirk Cousins, a drop back passer. But the other four were like, could break the NFL. And it turns out Trevor Lawrence has still been the best of them, but that isn't, two of them being absolute busts. Justin Fields, not a million miles away. And Trevor Lawrence is like, okay. Really not what was expected. I think it's a big second half of the season for Lawrence because I think they are still going to win the division because I just don't think there's anyone to contend with them. Tennessee have kind of had their week with Will Levis and it's kind of fallen away since. The Colts are kind of putting pressure on and they're having a great season. I think he could be in Shane Steichen. He's probably not going to win Coach of the Year, but I think he's doing a great job. But ultimately, I don't think the Jags are going to lose enough games. Doug Peterson's a professional enough coach. They could well have another bounce back next week and Lawrence comes out and looks real good again. I think they just need to get, it sounds real obvious, they just need to get the offense ticking a little more. I don't know exactly how to do so, but I think they've probably got the right people in place. It's not like Urban Meyer. I think Doug Peterson's a good enough head coach to see what's not working. I did like one of his comments to the press this week as well, where he got asked what didn't work on offense. And he got his notepad out and he went through like 3 drives in a row. He's like, this one, someone whiffed on a block. It pulls in a long third down, drives over. This one, missed assignment. It happens. I can't remember what the other one was. It was like drop catch or overthrown ball. I can't remember the exacts of it. I just thought that was a really good approach to accountable head coaching when you compare it to like Arthur Smith, who like comes out and like scolds reporters for asking a perfectly reasonable question, or Bill Belichick who sneers and we're on to next week. I just love like the actual accountability of it. Like, hey, here's the 3 players that fucked us up. You're playing a really good team in San Francisco. You can't make those mistakes and expect to win. Next question. I just thought that was a real refreshing approach.
Only thing I would say about like the division, so Texans only 1 back. And when you look at Jacksonville's schedule, they have got Texans at Houston, but then after that they've got Bengals, Browns, and Ravens. So, you've got them 3 in a row, then Bucks, and then you've got Panthers and Titans. But when you look at Texans, they've got Cardinals, then they got the Jags, but they got Broncos, Jets, Titans, Browns, Titans, Colts.
Yeah, you might well be right, actually.
And 1 game back.
I know which one I'd rather have as a schedule, yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming up to a huge game on, the 26th in 2 weeks' time against, Houston versus Jags. That could be, like I said, the Colts, they're 5-5 as well, so... a division we thought it was going to be a putrid division, and where the Jags might run away with it, they could get crawled, could get pulled into a fight, and certainly makes it interesting.
And speaking of those Houston Texans, that is our 4th game of the week. We are looking a little deeper at. Went into Cincinnati, and I mean it was a 3-point game in the end, but it kind of felt to me like the Texans always had it in control, which feels weird looking at the score. CJ Stroud for MVP. CJ Stroud is obviously Offensive Rookie of the Year. He is the next face of the NFL. He is balling the F out. Did you watch the game?
I did see all of it, so I was watching it on Red Zone. But I think, like you said, at the beginning, it felt like, I think just looking at the win probability, just see how it is. Like it felt like. The Bengals had the first quarter, but then after that, it felt like the Texans was just putting points on the board, and he always felt like the Bengals were trying to crawl it back. And when you actually the end of the game, realistically, the Bengals should have had that touchdown. I think it was Boyd who dropped in the end zone, and that changes the complex completely because scoring a touchdown the ball, there'd be 4 points up, and it just makes it a bit hard. Like, not saying that Houston could have gone down because Stroud just did the week before, and I think similar to what I said last week, he's got that ability where he's a kind of quarterback where you're like, oh, he's just gonna get them down in position. And I think they're the special quarterbacks. There's a lot of them, 49ers quarterback included. I think Cowboys were included, where if that situation, you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure. But you think the worst is going to happen. But there's some quarterbacks you are like, oh, they're just going to go down and they're going to do it. And it feels like Stroud was the same when that happened. And I think Burrows is the same on the opposite end.
Yeah.
So when they got the ball, it was like, where it was a 27-0 after the Bengals messed up there with Boyd's drop. It was like, oh, they're just going to either get a field goal here. And I think it got it fairly comfortably. I can't remember who it was. Someone had a huge play where he broke a few challenges and managed to get him in play. And I think that also injured then if you saw it, was it Hendrickson as well?
Yeah.
The same place. It was like double blow for the Bengals. But you got to give it to Texans 5-4. I don't think anyone would have predicted. I think only the hardcore Texans fan would have said 5-4, and then like I said, when you look at the schedule, like, oh, this is the kind of team who could win that division. It's unfortunate that they're in the AFC. If they win the NFC, you'd be like, oh, they're one of the favourites to get into the playoffs here. And they could actually do something. I think obviously
if they win the NFC South, they'd have won the division already, I think.
Exactly, yeah. So it's but yeah, you got to give it to them. Obviously, it's a bad loss for the Bengals, who were just coming round. I think they're still 5-4. They've got the Ravens. They've got a few others in the division, so I think they still can. I think with the Ravens losing, it's not as bad this defeat. I think if the Ravens had beat the Browns, you probably would have been like, okay, that's the division sorted.
Yeah.
But now it's still all for grabs, and if they can beat the Ravens, they'll be one game back. No, half a game back. So you got to give it to the Texans because they're just proving everyone wrong. And when you look at some of the stars, this was the whole thing. Like I keep seeing people going back to Jackson. Oh well, they haven't got the players and all this kind of. But when you look at Texans' like skill position, you're like, no one would have wanted half of these players in their squad.
And I mean, this week as well, Nico Collins has been real hot or cold. He was out this week. He's on paper their number one receiver. Damian Pierce hasn't had a great year either, but he came into the year as their number one running back. He was out. Dalton Schultz wasn't exactly getting great offers, or he wouldn't have took a 1-year deal with the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Tank Dell was a third-round pick, I believe, and he weighs about 150 pounds. Again, plenty of teams passed him. Noah Brown wasn't, again, chasing down big offers. That's why he signed with the Texans. And, between D'Amico Ryans, obviously, culture, intelligent, very intense leader, Bobby Slowick, them two have got to be two of the best hires. I mean, if they win this division, I'm not sure how you don't give D'Amico Ryans Coach of the Year. I know Dan Campbell's probably going to be number one seed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good stories, but the Lions were one game off the playoffs last year, and it's a very narrative-y award. If they win this division, I would have zero issue voting for D'Amico Ryans Coach of the Year. I don't get a vote. If so, Pete Cowell will be getting my vote because he's the only one I've backed for it. I'm just going to have a look while we're talking, actually, see what the awards. Coach of the Year, what do I get on D'Amico Ryans? Oh, plus 300, never mind. That's not good. Well, it's very good for D'Amico. Dan Campbell plus 150, D'Amico plus 300, Mike McDaniel plus 600. So, yeah, he's second favourite already. And rightly so. Yeah, I think one of the surprises of this game, though, the Texans' defense as well, because that Ravens offense has been firing since Burrow's healed, essentially. Sheldon Rankins got 3 sacks by himself, finished with 4 for the game. The Texans' defense, and I was surprised how well they got to him. Because, yeah, they've been firing on all cylinders. It felt like, obviously, no T. Higgins, but they've still got a pretty good wide receiver group. Joe Mixon's no slouch. The tight ends are very questionable, but they're all there catching balls. They're not total duds. And just like you've said a few times, massive win for the Texans. I think I certainly picked the Bengals on the spread. That was before T. Higgins was ruled out in my slight defense, but I don't think that it moved much, and I probably still would have picked the Bengals either way. I can't remember if you did as well, but my one slight disappointment of this game was Texans got Matt Amendola in for kicking. And it's like, come on, give Dare another chance. He was 1 for 1 the week before. A 30-yard field goal to win the game. He had Ogunbowale written all over it. And yeah, instead they went with Matt Amendola. I mean, good for Matt. I'm sure he enjoyed his moment, but how dare they?
Terrible. But yeah, I think, it's just, I feel like you said, it's when you look at the play, like Singletary gained 150 yards and, Noah Brown gained 172 this game. It feels like that's a great quarterback when you're making these plays. Noah Brown was a third wide receiver for Cowboys last year, maybe fourth?
Third, four, yeah. It's certainly not a role. It was like a role play at the very best. It was almost time.
I think he got 100 yards last week as well. So they're making it work, and again 2 interceptions. Obviously, I know Stroud threw he threw an interception, which obviously brought the Bengals back into it. But I think I had the Bengals just because I was just confident with them at home. But yeah, he used to keep proving us wrong, and it's another fun story. I don't mind it. And it's one of them I remember during the draft when they moved up to the Cardinals pick to get what did they get? Stroud at Anderson? Can't remember which way they went. I was a bit like, Will Anderson. I was a bit like, you're giving away a high pick next year for this, but how it's going, it's going to be a low 20s, and you're like, fair enough. You got Will Anderson, the best defender.
Yep.
In the draft. What the scouts were saying. So it might actually work out, and it's a great piece of business. And I think, like you said, the hires have been amazing, and it's a fun team to root for, which I wasn't expecting at the start of the year. So go Texans. I'd rather them win the division than the Jags, I think.
Me too. Yeah, it feels like a long time since Texans have been fun to root for, because even when Watson was playing really well, it was still Bill O'Brien who was a bummer, and I don't want to cheer Bill O'Brien, Patriots, what have you. Whereas D'Amico's a good character. Anyone off the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, I'll generally cheer for because they always play good football. And CJ Stroud is just, should we say it's a lot about different players each season, but he feels like the new face of the NFL. It's great. He's, very positive. He does a lot of social justice work already as such a young man. And certainly it's the kind of person you want front in the league. I think it's great, and long may it continue.
Yep. I think they've got the Cardinals next week, and I think that might be define what kind of team they are, because if they lose that, for example, they're they're going to be a team which are up and down. But they need to carry on this winning streak to keep this momentum going. But fun time.
Indeed, and that finishes off our 4 games we're looking more at, and onto our FourFold challenge. Fantasy Gameday is covering us up there, but that was week 10. Trust me. So we'll go through these. Paul, like I say, is he in Berlin? I think he's in Germany, right?
It's somewhere in Germany. I'm sure
it's somewhere in Germany. It could be in Frankfurt, soaking up the last of the vibes of Bill Belichick. Maybe we'll go with that. And he didn't have a losing week this week in FourFold Challenge. I'm sure he wanted us to shout that out. So it's I think the first in 9 weeks where he hasn't had a losing week. So good for Paul. But yeah, me and Paul both took the Cowboys to cover against the Giants, -17. Obviously a huge number. Don't think that was ever really in doubt, though. What was the final? -32, I believe. 9 -17. I'm have to do maths on the top of my head here. I think that's 32, though. So yeah, it just didn't. As bad as it could have been, I guess. The Giants did score 17 points, which we had discussed them get shut out to 0. Tommy DeVito being totally unable to throw the ball, but he did do kind of passable-ish. Certainly wasn't a positive performance, but it wasn't totally terrible. And yeah, I think they're in one of the driving, if not passenger seat, for that number 1 pick. They're certainly in the battle for it. They play the Patriots in 10 days or so. For the, Tankathon is on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. But I'm not sure there's too many takeaways from this game, really. Dallas came out and crushed them. Very professional performance. Paul did bet the Dallas defense anytime touchdown, and I don't know how that didn't come in. Felt like that was a gimme. I think it was only plus 250, which, defense touchdowns are normally, plus 600, plus 700, give or take. But yeah, I don't think... They did have 1 interception, Deron Bland, I think. They had a few sacks, but yeah, I would have presumed that would be a banker going in, especially when they end up getting 49 points, but wasn't to be. But yeah, just a very comfortable win overall. We went Dak and CD Lamb in our Fantasy Gameday lineup, and I think those turned out to be real good decisions. Well, they were real good decisions. CD Lamb continues his recent domination, and yeah, Dak has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for the last month, certainly. Incredible to see. Long may it continue again, because he gets enough shit that does Dak Prescott, and he's playing light out football right now.
Yeah, and when you look at the next two games, you've got Panthers and Commanders. Should really continue with that trend. Yeah, like you said, he's played certainly in the conversation for the best quarterback in the NFL. Certainly top three. How it's been the last few weeks. I know but they had the Rams, obviously they had the Eagles, and obviously the Giants here. But you only can beat the teams who are in front of you and perform. And I think that Eagles game was a big game for him to actually prove that he could play against big time players. Will he continue to the end of the season? I think that's probably the only knock on Dak is, can he keep it consistent throughout the year and the playoffs? But when you beat, I think it was the record, the amount of points. What was it, 89-17 in the two games against the Giants?
Yeah,
I think it was the biggest spread between two teams. So yeah, Giants looking woeful, and it's who would have thought the Giants and Patriots maybe battling out for the number one pick?
Yeah, I think I predicted them both to be bad this season, but this is not what I expected. Not quite this level of, especially the Giants, because I don't think they were too. I don't think there was any reason for them to be this much worse than last year. Brian Daboll has been a good first-year coach. No huge losses on the team on either side of the ball, and they've just kind of capitulated completely. They have had injuries, obviously, so they have been snake bitten, as we were one of our three nominations last week. But it's gone to the absolute gutter. Anything that could go wrong is going wrong for them.
Yeah,
at least Tommy DeVito still get his bed made. So
exactly, yeah. Because even the defense was playing decent, but now they've gone off the boil as well, and it's one of them where it's like, oh, I'm curious what the I think they got some big decisions coming up. I think obviously they gave the big contract to Daniel Jones, so how they're going to play that out. I think they'll keep Daboll, but I think how this year's going is going to be on the hot seat next year. Is going to certainly make it a lot tougher next year. I think if they're just middle of the table and missed out the playoffs, I think he did good enough last year that it would be pretty safe. But I think how terrible this year's gone, it's not great. But they've got some big decisions and that's why it's going to be interesting. Because I think with the Patriots, if they get the number one pick, I think Jones is already gone. I think he's not going to get a new contract like Trevor Lawrence will get a new contract. But I don't think with Jones getting that contract, he's going to make it trickier and see how that works. But and
that was always a bad decision. This isn't like being clever after the fact. Everybody who wasn't wearing giant tinted glasses said, "What are you doing?" And every week got by, it's looking worse and worse and worse. So. Yeah, they can't get rid of him this coming off season, so he'll be there. But I certainly think he's going to have some strong competition, unlike this year. I don't think it's going to be Tyrod and Tommy DeVito backing him up next year.
Probably not. And just say the Cowboys, they've got to absolutely beat the next 2 weeks. It's very simple, but I think they've got to keep going and win big. Just because with the games coming up after that, Seahawks, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. Need them 2 wins to see if they want any chance of winning that division. So just got to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Moving on, Joe, you took you bet against a Pastronaut. You went up against Josh Dobbs, back Derek Carr, 2.5 points, and obviously got a big red X.
Yeah. It wasn't one I should have just taken the Cowboys. That one just felt too easy. So that's why I stayed away from it. Just like, no, this is too easy. So surely it can't go back. But yeah, I was surprised how well Dobbs played. I was a bit like, I was expecting the Saints defense to give him a bit more, give him some trouble and actually, be a lot closer. But I think it's time to accept the Saints are just one of them teams where they're going to play well one week, play terrible the next week, and play okay. And, they're just all over the place. And it's just, I might just stay away from betting them because who knows who turns up each week. But yeah, no, Carr got injured like during the, I think maybe the second quarter, third. But he wasn't playing well before I think they had 3 points before that, and they just couldn't get anything going. The Vikings defense has played well, and they're doing a lot of pressure. And I think you got to give a big shout out to the Vikings DC,
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores, there you go. Because I think they were absolutely woeful last year, and it's not like they've got better players. I think they let a lot of them good players go, but they've been playing awesome. Hunter's been, if I don't think if Garrett or a few others were playing incredible, I think he would certainly be up there because I think he's leading in either sacks or pressures, but he's leading in one of like the big stats for defense. So you got to give it to Vikings, and I think now the favourites to get that 7th seed. I think if you think a few weeks ago, when they started off 0-3, and I think even when like Kirk Cousins was playing well, it's like okay, I think, and then when he went injured, it was like okay, they're gonna fall off, and someone else is gonna take it, but. It feels like the NFC feels very sewn up already, which is a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
In terms of the playoff picture, like I feel like the Vikings will get the 7th seed, Seahawks, Cowboys, 49ers will fight out for the other ones, and then the other division winners are more or less. Oh, saying that NFC South's not because that's just a trash division, and no one.
But just whichever one it is, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
which one.
just someone to throw it down at the board and decide. But yeah, just disappointing from the Saints side, and I know that the bye week, so we'll see how Card is. I think he did his shoulder again, and I think I checked for concussion, but I don't know if he actually went out for concussion. But also, just from this game, did you see Winston's 2 touchdowns, which were like, I don't know how.
What is he doing?
He got both of them.
Yeah, if you think Brock
they were
Purdy's
both
was
so accurate. It feels like with Jameis, he's one of the players. I think why I love Jameis because he'll do something like that where it's like incredible. Like if he could do that every single play, he'll be the best quarterback ever. But then he'll do after them 2 touchdowns that are ridiculous, where he was thrown across his body and managed to like get in the all in place. The wide receiver who made a great play as well. To actually score a touchdown, then he throws like 2 or 3 interceptions just afterwards. But I think I heard a start on another pod where I think that first touchdown was I think when it was thrown, it was like the least likely to be a touchdown in the last few years. It was like that extraordinary, like how that ended up. But then I think the next one afterwards was even more extraordinary that somehow ended up in a touchdown. So there was a huge cash by Alava. That was incredible. But just the Saints being the Saints, and it's. I think both these teams is like they're either gonna get to the playoffs and get knocked out the first round, or maybe win one. But they're not. I don't think they're gonna win the Super Bowl. I think so. It's just fun to watch them and give it up to Dobbs. Maybe the story of the season. How amazing it's been.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, Josh or TikTok. Josh Dobbs had posted on his own TikTok. There's a guy who like sings the Creed song "Higher" over highlights to things, and one of them was the Josh Dobbs touchdown run, and it's got this guy singing "Higher" by Creed over it. It's very funny. But yeah, shout out the Pastronaut. And I mean, I agree the Vikings they'll make the playoffs, I think, and great shout out to them because I had them winning 5 games this season because of the defensive issues. And yeah, like you already said, massive shout out to Brian Flores for that because talent-wise, they shouldn't be playing this well. But they do get Justin Jefferson back next week, I believe. I still don't think they're going to win a playoff game, but going to be very watchable the rest of the season. And you compare 2 second-year head coaches who snuck into the playoffs. I mean, the Vikings didn't sneak in last year, their record, but I'm talking like point differential, how they were as a team. Probably weren't a playoff, top team last year. And you compare Kevin O'Connell this year to Brian Daboll this year. I'd say the Vikings lost more talent because they're kind of rebuilding on the fly. And, the Giants didn't lose too much. They signed their franchise quarterback long term. And it's just total different energies compared to how each team is doing. I just think he's not going to, again, I don't think he's going to get coach of the year because there's too many great stories and they were so good last year record wise. But Kevin O'Connell's having a great coaching career. This is only 2nd-year period coaching. To get this team as banged up as they are with the players that they have, missing and coming through every week, different things. I just think they're one of the stories of the year. It's really good to see. Yeah,
because when you look at this, like you said, the head coach and what they're doing there versus the Saints, I've never liked Dennis Allen. And I don't know why I do know why they hired him. It was an easy hire, but it just feels like they're really going nowhere, and it feels like they're going to get a middling draft pick again. And I feel like they need to blow that up. But I feel like if they do make the playoffs, they'll probably keep him for another year just for that. Cow's looking better, but that's gone a bit downhill. But yeah, there's some teams where you just think, you're never going to win a Super Bowl with this head coach. So, or this regime, blow it up, get someone who could do that. Yeah, you might whiff on the next one, but at least you're trying rather than just going another year with Dennis Allen, because I just don't think
Dennis Allen's never going to win a Super Bowl as a coach.
No.
I feel very confident going with that.
I am curious, just because I know you got some fantasy stats and stuff. Where is Dobbs like on the QB ranking? Because it must be high, like points.
I think it's top 10, yeah.
Yeah. Who would have thought that?
It's genuinely. But it's funny because I have him in one dynasty league, and he's number 8 overall. He's number 7 quarterback. Do you know who the one non-quarterback ahead of him is? As a quick on-the-fly trivia game.
Oh, is it AJ Brown? Oh,
McCaffrey. CMC.
Yeah.
Yeah, McCaffrey, yeah. Who we didn't show out actually during the game. He lost his touchdown streak.
Have you seen what he said?
I think.
Yeah. You see what he said in his conference? He just went, "Oh, I'm shit now." He said everyone else got touchdown, going at me, some shit, something like that. I don't know if he swears. I don't know if CMC swears, but he said something like that. So there you go.
Yeah, he's a great character. I love CMCs. Seems like the kind of thing he would say. Yeah. Cool. Alan, our guest for the week. I won't spoil it for how we did, but we'll get there. But he picked the Steelers -3 and snuck it really. A 4-point win over the Packers. Once again, the Steelers outrushed, outgained yardage wise. Didn't look great again, and they're 6-3.
I think you just need to repeat what I said last week, really. What I said about Mike Tomlin. This is kind of game.
I mean, if we keep doing your repeats about Mike Tomlin, we're going to be an X-rated podcast, Joe. So,
yeah.
I'm a little loath to go quite on Control-C, Control-V, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah, Kenny Pickett, 14 passes completed for 126 yards, no touchdowns, no INTs, and they grind out a 23-19 win. That is a Mike Tomlin wet dream. You're exactly right. Jalen Warren gets a touchdown. Najee gets a touchdown. It just mind-blowing to me that the Steelers are 6-3. They do not look like a winning team. And yet every week we have the exact same conversation. I don't know how much more there is to say at this point. If you have anything big takeaways from this game, please go ahead.
I think because I've got Najee in fantasy, and he's certainly playing better the last few weeks. I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
I think they need a running game in order to help Pickett. The defense, I don't think they're being incredible. They're not being like the Browns defense, but it just feels like the kind of team who just does enough, which just, has a takeaway at the right time. Just as this, they were playing the Packers, who I have no confidence in whatsoever. And, the Packers did have a chance to, well, I say win at the end, but they certainly had a few chances near the end and had the ball, had a few possessions. So, like you said, 6-3, and you look at their schedule, they've got the Browns and Bengals, obviously tough next 2 games, but then they've got Cardinals, Patriots, Colts, and then they got the Bengals, Seahawks, Ravens. So, if they win them 3 middle games and sneak another one, that's 10 wins.
Yeah.
That could easily be in the playoffs if we if this point with the Chargers, how the Bills are going. So I wonder if it could easily be all the AFC North teams, which would be absolutely crazy, but that'd be awesome. But because it happened. Yeah, I think only thing is maybe the Jags and Houston, if they battle it out, and they might just knock one of them out.
Yeah,
and it feels like it should be the Steelers who get knocked out of that, the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns. But you just never know with the Steelers team; they just know how to win. It's Mike Tomlin,
Yep,
coach of the century.
The uglier the better.
Oh, it's no coach, that's Belichick. But how the hell he's managed to get over 500 every year? That's just incredible. So
yeah, and it feels like every year it gets more incredible as well. Because every year it's like, how are this team winning games? It's like, I mean, I'd be stunned if they don't get to 9 now. They're at 6 already. Seems like they're going to.
Yeah.
Our underdogs, Paul, winning underdog selection, which I think is pretty rare for Paul. I know he normally hits his favorite, but underdog, Alan and Paul.
It's opposite way around. He normally doesn't hit his favorite.
Also I dragged him to his favorite. I see. Okay, cool. I hope he's listening. He picked the Browns, and we've already covered it, but great pick in the end because we both went the Ravens, and 13 down after 5 minutes of game time. So Alan and Paul both hit the Browns beating the Ravens. I had last night's Monday Night Football, Broncos over the Bills. And it kind of just what I said in the previews. I don't sound like I'm, big in my felt, but like the Bills are just so flawed right now. It's hard to take them at 7.5 to beat anybody, even if the Broncos had probably deservedly lost with that very dodgy field goal, 12 men on the field, penalty, etc. It still would have covered the 7.5. They just don't seem they can put teams away right now between the offensive whoopsies, for lack of a better word, between fumbling, Josh Allen, throwing INTs, and the defense is just soft. I can't think of another way to put it. They are suffering with injuries, but they're just not a good defense right now. And, Josh Allen is still an incredibly talented quarterback, certainly. He should still be in that upper echelon. I know he's had some, he's had more interceptions than you would like, obviously, but I think you just have to take the rough with the smooth with Josh Allen. He's always going to have the rough, but he throws a lot more than anyone else. He's generally pretty accurate completion percentage-wise, and he is the offense. They haven't put enough around him over the years, I would dare say. I think I would look more at the GM than... I don't have... Anyone who's watching this by now or listening to this knows Ken Dorsey has been fired, so we're not breaking news, but we'll talk about it. I don't think Ken Dorsey was a solution. I don't think he was necessarily the problem either. I don't think there's too much skill talent on that offense. Stephon Diggs is obviously one of the best receivers in the NFL, but after that, Gabe Davis is a one-trick pony. Dalton Kincaid is a rookie tight end who anything you get's kind of a bonus. James Cook isn't a bad running back, certainly, but he's not a workhorse, and he's not a top 10 running back in the league. It's just kind of a lot of okay pieces, and let's just hope Josh Allen will continue to be Josh Allen at his peak every week. And when the defense falls off, the margin's just so fine for them. Huge win for Denver, though. As much as I've criticised him through the offseason, Sean Payton's had a good second half of the first half of the season. They've kind of turned it around quite a lot, I think. They look very competent, which they certainly didn't in the first half of the season. So, yeah, as much as I don't like the guy, and I still think it was a bad trade to bring him in, etc., I do think they've had a lot better last few weeks than the start of the season.
So we're just laughing at your first half of the season.
I can never think of a good way to put that. First quarter of the season is probably it's probably the better way to put it. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, they've had a better second quarter of the season than first quarter. That is a much more succinct way of saying it. You're right. But yeah, big win for them last night, and yeah, like I say, Ken Dorsey fired. I think Ken Dorsey was scapegoated. Truthfully. It wasn't him who called 2 back-to-back blitzes on Russell Wilson to get a huge defensive pass interference penalty down the field because Russell Wilson's seen the blitz coming because it's the exact same play call you just called him the play before. But Sean McDermott's not going to fire himself.
No.
And I think that's so often the case. Mike McCarthy with Kellen Moore at the end of last season, you've always got to find a coordinator to fire. And Ken Dorsey bites the bullet. I don't think Ken Dorsey, I keep saying Dorsey, Ken Dorsey bites the bullet, and like I say, I don't think he was a good coach. I don't think he was getting the best out of his team, but I certainly don't think he was the problem in Buffalo. And there's a lot of questions need to be asked, and that could be somewhere I think that has a clear outcome at the end of the year because when you go from being the favorite to one of the favorites to a mediocre team, it kind of stands to reason the next step is we need to get back to being favorites again. I don't think it's that easy. You're now paying Josh Allen what you're paying Josh Allen. Couple of not great draft classes in a row. Again, not terrible, but not great, certainly. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of work to do in Denver. There's a lot of work to do in Denver, but there's a lot of work to do in Buffalo as well. Yeah,
I think McDermott's probably got quite a long rope just because how downtrodden Buffalo was before he got there. So I think because he brought this to the to the city, to the area where they were laughing stock for a number of years, and he's turned that around. So I think he's probably got some rope in terms of he's at least going to get another year or two. Just bring Brian Daboll back to see if he wants to go out in New York. But I think that's probably one of the reasons, just because how good they were with Brian Daboll. And it might just be the regression of the players they've got. But you got to find someone to blame. And when you look at the Bills' schedule, I was like, because they've lost games where they needed to win just because how the schedule is. And so they've got the Jets next week, who they lost to obviously the start of the season. So that's tricky. But then they've got Eagles, at Chiefs, versus Cowboys, at Chargers versus Patriots, who they lost to as well, and then at Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't think they're making the playoffs.
So they might only win 2 of them games.
Yeah.
How they're playing, they might only win 1 of them games. So that's 6 and 11, which will be someone's getting fired. If it was, I don't think McDermott. Maybe they might, use a GM, or they might just
if they go 6 wins, I wouldn't be stunned with a clear out.
Yeah,
because that's such a fall off. But I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I feel like Diggs is gone at the end of the year. And if you've seen, there's been a lot of Instagram stories, and his brother's been.
It's always the same with Diggs.
Yeah, and it feels like all the times, like, get him out. Like all his friends are like his brother, get him out of Buffalo, and it's just like, where is it gonna fucking go? The trade deadline's over.
Exactly.
I don't really get that kind of thing right now. Yeah, fair enough. Start of the year, if you want to get out somewhere in the summer, makes sense. Making noise. That's it is a very owners run kind of league where the players don't have too much power, but they are starting to find some. So I don't mind that. But, after trade deadline's gone and Deshaun and all that, it's a bit like, why? You're not helping your team whatsoever. And I think they might just lose patience with Diggs. But obviously, if they get rid of Diggs, then they've literally got no one. So it's,
yeah.
So I don't know if you saw, I haven't read into it, but I saw something online where it was like, apparently the punter had something sticky on his fingers for the last field goal. So I'm not quite sure. It might just be like one of them. I just saw it like on a article somewhere, and I was like,
I didn't see this, no. But wasn't there a thing like the Eagles kicker had this earlier in the year? I seem to remember this being a thing with the Eagles kicker or Eagles punter. I think it was the Eagles kicker was doing something sticky.
Yeah.
Might need to investigate this one offline, though.
Exactly. It could be a Patriots. We could break the... we'll do some sticky gate or something like that.
There we go, yeah.
Yeah.
Good teams win. Great teams have sticky gates. Yeah, speaking of not great teams, you missed out on the Jets Raiders for your Jets +1. What was it?
And you know what? It was
16-12. Jeez.
I think but they had a chance. I don't know if you saw right at the end. They had like a Hail Mary. Got to the end.
The Tyler Conklin.
Wilson. Yeah, and I think Wilson was there as well. Was pretty close to getting it, but I think I only chose this because I had 2 underdogs, and one of those was the Panthers, who I should have chosen because they actually managed to cover. So it was which bad team is gonna do something decent against the other. And that we'll see then how it reflects in the against the spread competition. I didn't do too well this week because quite a few underdogs managed to pull off some I say upsets. They managed to cover the spread. But yeah, it's just another week where I think I can't remember how many quarters have gone without scoring a touchdown. I think it's a ridiculous number. I think it's like 35 drives they haven't thrown a touchdown.
Yeah, it's 32 or 35 drives, I think it is, yeah.
Which is just diabolical. And it's just like, I think we mentioned it when the mid-season awards, they are snake bitten, but you've gone into the season with Wilson being your backup. Rodgers is 39 against with a dodgy O-line. And you see other teams, you see Dobbs, you see quite a few other backups where they've done it, like Minshew, they've done a decent job when there's like a good team around. They should self-scout and know that Wilson is just not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
I understand you drafted him. I understand there's some loyalty there, and they're never going to say he's an absolute waste of a quarterback, but he is. You just got to self-scout that. And it's one of them teams where it doesn't happen all the time where that team, except for a quarterback, should be an offensive line. They're a playoff team. If they had Rodgers, it might not have been amazing, but still it would have been, watchable. It still would have been, they would have been contending. Right now, it's just how the defense is, they've got one of the best defenses in the league, and I'm waiting. I feel like it's starting to, the cracks are starting to show, and I think it's going to blow up soon if they lose the Bills next week, for example, who are also in a terrible place, and they lose it, 16-12, just and the defense have done their job. I just don't know why they just didn't get anyone in, even before the trade deadline. Just try to get Brissett in, get some someone like that in, just to give them an option. Even last year, at least they had Mike White, and they could go to him, and he had a few decent games, a few bad games, but at least it was something different from Wilson, where it's just painful. You just know when he gets to more than 3rd down and 5, they've ran it twice, and if it's third and 5 or higher, he's not going to get it, and it's like a shock when he does.
Yeah,
and that's just not an NFL team.
his best trait is when players break down and he takes off running.
Yeah,
and he's not a great runner. Like it's just that's all he has. He's like a skinny Baker Mayfield at running.
And I'm curious how it's going to go with again another end season. I think is Bob Salah. Is he a risk if this goes downhill a bit further? Is he at risk of getting fired? I think he might be able to sneak one more year, but he'll definitely be on the hot seat next year. I think the GM, he's not done well on offensive line, but I think because he's made other great picks where he's managed to hit on, especially last year, I think he was a big hire and he's a name. But I'm worried about Bob Salah. If they go rest of the year and let's say they don't win another game, I think he could be out.
I agree. Yeah, probably. I think, and the things came out, and he said, "Well, actually, Zach Wilson's playing well." It's like you just lying. Anybody with eyes can see that he's not playing well. You're not protecting him by saying things like that. You're drawing more attention to it. And last week he was on the radio. I don't know if you've seen this, where he was asked about why is he not playing. His name's gone from my head. The backup they brought in. I want to say Tyler Conklin, but that's not right. Trevor Siemian, yes, thank you. That's why he's not playing. Like, what's he not doing? And Salah literally just goes like, "I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. I can't really answer it." And these things are not convincing as a head coach. And the defense is playing well, but the defense is stacked with talent as well. I don't think he's doing enough as a leader to really, he must come back next year. I think you could see why they'd get rid of him. I think they probably will, but I think it's certainly up in the air. And, coming to this year with all the hope of Aaron Rodgers and going to make the playoffs, I think the only hope is that next year they're going to have Aaron Rodgers. So you've got to give him that year to see what he could have done. I'm not sure if I buy it, but I think that might be what happens.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best defensive coordinators. I'm sure if he gets fired, it'll be teams after him and whatnot. But it's is he actually a good head coach? Because he's not getting the right people and offensive coordinator. I know you got
Nate Hackett.
Yeah, they got Nate Hackett, and I think the year before that, the last 2 years, they had a McFleur brother who was part of the 49ers. One of the offensive, but if you're whiffing twice on your offensive coordinator, and he felt like he only brought Hackett because of Rodgers.
Yeah,
and Rodgers is Hall of Famer, one of the best to do it. But you're the head coach at the same time. Yeah, you need to decide that. That's why, I know McFleur not having a great year at Greenville, but at least it felt like he still made his mark, and that's why they had a good team. It just feels like he got run over a little bit there, and it's not really the sign you want to see from the Jets side.
Definitely not. And I did see, just before we move on from the Jets, Zach Wilson has thrown 20 touchdowns on 931 passes, a 2.1 touchdown rate. Is the lowest of any player with 900 or more pass attempts ever in NFL history. Kenny Pickett doesn't have enough attempts, but he's at 2.0%. So it's one to watch, see if Kenny Pickett gets to 900 attempts in his career, and if he gets above Zach Wilson's 2.1 touchdown rate. Putrid. We've covered Allen took the Ravens, the Browns over the Ravens, obviously. Paul, after a 2-0 start on his thing there, is back to his regular form. Over 39 for the Titans, Bucks. I don't know if we touched on this game. Ended up Bucks 20, Titans 6. The Will Levis experiment. I'm not going to say it's dead in the water, but it felt like the Bucks kind of took his lunch money this week and blitzed him all game and just said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And the answer was nothing. Not all his fault, but that 4-touchdown debut feels a long time ago.
Yeah, I think he's still he when I watched him against the Steelers, I feel like he still had a good game. I know they didn't score enough points, but he still looked like, you know what, he could be a middling kind of quarterback where it could be like a Tannehill. And sometimes in this league you just got to accept you got Tannehill. Not everyone's going to get CJ Stroud. It is what it is, but it just feels like that a kind of team who's just got nothing around him. Yeah. I know they got Hopkins and but Henry's not doing anything this year. I don't know. It's that awkward thing. It feels like if that Will Levis started a week after, they may have got rid of quite a lot of players.
Yeah.
I feel like Henry on another team, but I think Henry hardly got anything going. And when you're a rookie quarterback, the few things you need is a good running game and a wide receivers who can just catch it, within 10 yards, and it just feels like it's all or nothing. And it was surprising because I was the Bucks defense didn't have a great week the week before. I thought the Titans would do nothing better. But you got to give it to Mayfield as well. It's actually surprised me how good he's been.
Me too.
Because I took Kyle Trask really late in the fantasy, obviously way late. But I thought he's at least going to play like
half the season.
Maybe, half the season. But Baker's probably looked the best he's looked for a long time. They've actually got him. So I think the quarterback coach,
Dave Canales.
Yeah, he was a quarterback coach for Gino last year, wasn't he?
Yep. I think he was the OC actually when he was a quarterback coach for Gino last year, but he was the OC I think in Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like obviously he's got two quarterbacks who were who had okay to not so great start of the season. They've actually turned him into like decent quarterbacks. So I think he's played well. Mike Evans being Mike Evans, he didn't start well. He dropped quite a few, but he keeps going strong. 143 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 receivers. He's got to be a Hall of Famer, isn't he? He's got to be up there.
Absolutely.
He might be one of the most underrated wide receivers, I think.
They
should. I can't believe they didn't offer him a contract to start the year. He feels like he should get he should be one of them wide receivers who just stays at one team.
Yeah,
they should
Larry
do all
Fitz.
they can. Yeah, a bit Larry Fitz, a bit like Calvin Johnson, that kind of. Just do all you can to just keep him at the club because he's been your team, and you've already won a Super Bowl. You don't really need,
And he's always reliable. He might not be as good as he was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, but he's still super reliable. Still their best receiver.
Oh, what do you think? I can see him going to the Cowboys next year. It feels like
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, it's Jerry's kind of move.
Yeah, but that'd be awesome. Lamb and Evans.
Yeah.
Oh,
get to come out there. I'm happy.
Yeah, but no, the Bucs have lost quite a few games where you thought they could have won it, where it was like they just, especially last week. So it just feels like there are going to be a lot of games where it's like a flip a coin who wins.
Yeah,
especially they won this week.
And they're second in the division.
Yeah,
it's stunning. And I feel like just touching on Baker Mayfield, I have kind of a little theory on Baker that the lower the expectations are, the better he performs.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as people start getting excited about him, it's like he just caves in on himself. And this year is one of the biggest things of that. I think everybody thought Kyle Trask was going to start at least 6-7 games because Baker's he's garbage. He's had his moment a long time ago. And he's not going to be a starter. And he's been not brilliant, but he's been really good. And certainly to expectation, I think he's been really good. And yeah, it does just kind of, I just love every time you write him off, he just comes back with another win or another big performance. And yeah, just you were saying about Derrick Henry, he was 2.2 yards per carry this week, 11 carries for 24 yards, I believe it was. Just not great, obviously, by any measure. But I mean, they still gave him 11 carries, and that's not a huge amount, but you'd think it's enough to get going for Derrick Henry. And kind of feels like the moment to trade him is well past. I think he's a free agent at the end of this year. I'm not sure what his market will be because he kind of, people often say about Henry, if any running back's going to be good, long term, Derrick Henry's built for it. He's time comes for everyone, and I hope it hasn't come for Derrick Henry, but it does seem to be getting less and less of those big splashy weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised, certainly. Anyway, over 41 for the Vikings and Saints was my pick, and I thank you, James Winston, for coming into the game and getting that for me because I don't think Derek Carr was getting there. Panthers Bears, Joe. What are you doing?
I just thought, it wasn't horrendously far off just because how low the
yeah, it was 38. I think it was 16-13. It finished 29 points.
29. So
and you could have got overtime in there if and an extra 3 points. That would have been 32. Could have got a push easily if you'd gone to overtime.
Well, you know what? Probably wasn't. They probably would have drawn tied.
19 all, yeah.
Yeah, there's not much to say about this game. Bears win. No. Well done. Oh, the only good thing for Bears, obviously, they've got the Panthers pick, so that helps them in that sense. Bryce Young not looking amazing, but I think I saw some stats of I can't remember who the other 4 quarterbacks were, but it's very similar, and they're good quarterbacks now. So I think it was Josh Allen. I think Burrows was a losing record and threw quite a lot of interceptions, and there was one other where the actual touchdown interception and the record was very similar. So it's give them another year where they've actually got a decent team. And yeah, the Bears win.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see a lot of kind of smoke coming out of Carolina. This might be Frank Reich one and done. He might take play calling back over from Thomas Brown because he's just out of his depth and the players are unhappy. just feels like one of the most toxic environments, I think, maybe in the NFL right now. Carolina. Very interested to see what the next 9 months, I guess, up until next September brings, because there's no first round pick, obviously. Potentially no coach. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say the problem is I think it's the owner, and you can't really do anything about that. So unlucky.
You can't fire the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, the last owner that got rid of in Carolina, the melted his statue. What's his name? Tepper? No, it's Tepper now. Somebody Richardson, I think it was. Jack Richardson? Jerry Richardson. Richardson, who was...
less said about him, the better.
Yeah, I mean, they melted his statue, so they don't do that for heroes.
Minus discretion.
Alan, again, going 3-0 at this point, picked the Lions Chargers over, which was 41.5, and the Lions got 41 points. So, fair to say, smashed that over. Finished with 41 plus 38, 79 points.
Yeah.
Trying to do some quick maths there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quick, very easy maths. It's plus 2 numbers, but yeah, smashed it. That is when one of your teams gets within half a point, you feel pretty good about getting the over, I think.
Yep. So,
and
sorry, Paul.
Oh, he took the under.
Yeah.
I haven't got to the next line yet. So yeah, we'll cover Paul's under at the same time. 41.5 didn't feel like there's some better unders to pick this week. Obviously, because that one went 78 points, almost double what the prediction was. So yeah, Paul started hot with his 2-0 for his favourite and his underdog, and then back to regular form, I guess, for his over-under. That is a real bad one, though. The Chargers Lions up. We'll have to ask him next week what he was thinking there. Maybe he'll chip in with a comment or a text on when he listens or watches the video. Very bad. My under, I went Colts at the Patriots in Frankfurt. We've had a lot of talk about how much it's obviously a slow turf, and obviously a lot of talk about Mac Jones has got a slow brain, and this was a 10-6 game, and it was a tough watch.
Yeah, I didn't even get up and watch it. That's how this game was, because I would have to get up I think it's 7:30 in the morning here, and I just didn't even bother. And I'm so happy I didn't, because I think you stopped watching it, didn't you, like near the end as well? It was just...
Yeah, Chelsea City came on. I mean, if it was a good NFL game, I would double screen it. But I was like, I'm just going to watch Chelsea City. This game sucks. I got to watch the Bailey Zappi interception, which was fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Mac Jones' interception just before that. Like, it's nuts that they get dropped to the bench with one drive to win the game.
Yeah.
He can't replay. I know Bill's doing Bill's thing and not giving a true answer, but it feels like he can't play the next game. I'd be shocked if he does.
Yeah, they asked Mac Jones, are you playing next week? He's like, I haven't heard anything. It's like, okay, I know they want to buy. I think they want to buy this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it might be buy to Mac Jones as well. But yeah, this is one of the most comfortable unders I've ever seen, I think. Primetime unders have been pretty good this year anyway, but I mean, this was a screaming out to be taken, I think. And yeah, 41 was a thing they could have played till today and it'd still be under, especially if Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi were still quarterbacking. And our last two, Joe, you picked it and so did Alan. So yeah, I went 4-0 this week, which I think is my third one of this season, which pretty pleased with, obviously. Your worst week yet, Joe? 1-3?
No, I actually went 1-3. So I've had 2 bad weeks, which is we'll talk about the record. But yeah, this was 46. So
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you and Alan took this one at 40, under 47, and it finished 46. And I had this in one of my parlays last night, my same game parlays, and I was feeling so confident because I had the Broncos covering plus 7.5 or plus 8, whatever it was, and Javonte Williams getting a certain amount of yards that he'd hit. Josh Allen's throwing an interception, which he'd done. I'm like, it just needs to be under 47, no problem. I'm like, oh shoot, we're getting towards problem because the Broncos have kind of let the Bills come back here, and the Broncos scored a touchdown I wasn't really expecting. But yeah, win's a win. So we've touched on this game. We don't need to go on much further. Obviously, Ken Dorsey got fired because he didn't get the over here. So see you later, Ken. And massive shout out to Alan, our first guest 4-0. So I have 3 4-0s hitting our FourFolds. You have 3.
Yep.
Joe's 3 4-0s on our FourFold. our guests have won 4-0 on their FourFolds.
7.
And that, 7 in 10 weeks. That concludes a list of people who have got a 4-0 week on the FourFold challenge. Sure, you'll get there soon, Paul. Our overall standings, I'm just going to do wins. We don't hear about the pushes and everything else. Joe's got 26 wins on the FourFolds. I have 25. The guests are 20 and 20. What a great record. I love that. And Paul is on 17. So, again, work to do. Paul. And then we'll go into our spread competition, see how we've done this week. I have no idea how. I think you updated us on Sunday, but I kind of forget how we were doing. I felt like I had a pretty good week, but I haven't checked it. Alrighty, so what we got?
So your last few, so Paul had a great start. So he lost the last 2. Wow. Yeah, he was 9-2-1 before the Sunday night game. So
see, I'll just touch. I think we probably covered every game actually, but we'll go through them and see what we haven't. But yeah, we all went the Carolina Panthers over the Bears, plus 3.5, close-ish one, but yeah. Please, we all got it because the Bears are putrid and the Panthers are bad as well, but 3.5 points is a lot to give up to the Bears. We all picked Indy in an ugly game. Paul, Lone one to pick the Browns. We all won on the Steelers. Paul, the only one to win on the Texans as well. Great shout there.
Big shout, Paul.
Yeah, I was the only one to take the Vikings. You and Paul both took the 49ers. I took the Jags. That's got to be one of the worst picks I've made in a while, I think. Jags did not turn up at all. Paul, the only one to take the Titans, who lost. Me and you both won with the Bucks. Only one to take the Cardinals, who won. The return of Kyler Murray. And that's probably the only game we haven't touched on, really. But I think the return of Kyler Murray says a lot. He was pretty. I mean, I'm not going to say he was 100%, but he looked really good.
It was actually fun to have him. And how he played, and with a new regime, it's getting more like, he might stay next year. They've already signed the contract. Yeah. There's a whole thing about they might get, I think because Texans are not doing as bad as everyone thought. So they might still get a high draft pick, but now they might not have to go quarterback, so they can either get like a decent amount for him, or they get Harrison Jr. So I think they're in a strong position. How he played, I think he was like there was no coming back with Cliff Kingsbury, but now with the new regime, even though they've only won 2, they've looked a lot better than what people thought, and it feels like they're more of a
hard.
Yeah, they're more of a team. It feels like there's more cohesion with a bad roster. So having your quarterback set and how much we played, and fuck knows what the Falcons doing. Again, I think they're going to be a team where I might stay away from for a while because
whatever the numbers, whatever the fixture, just pick the opposite.
Can't even blame Ridder now because I think I know he went out injured. Heineke, but he was still playing atrocious. Yeah. So I think they're on a bye next week, but. Yeah, I've got a feeling Ridder's going to start the next game. Yeah,
they are on a bye, and back to Desmond Ridder next week. Chargers lines were touched on. It was a push after I swung and I'm like, I don't know what to pick. Lions, Chargers, doesn't matter. Everybody gets a push. Dallas, we all picked. Paul was the only one to pick Washington, going to Seattle and covering the spread there. Another good pick by Paul. He's had a good week on this one, like we say. Seems to have a lot of ways. Being the solo person picking. So what that one ended up 3-point game. So well within it. I was the only one to take the Raiders. I was kind of surprised. I was the only one. And then I was the only one to take the Buffaloes. The Broncos. So another not great week for you, Joe. I'm surprised. 6-7-1. I was 8-5-1, and Paul 9-4-1 wins the week. I'm sure he can't wait to see his crown on social media tomorrow. And our overall standings, I'm not going to do the losses and pushes. We don't care about who's got the win. So Paul's coming up the rear, 74. It's getting closer though overall. Paul on 74. Oh, I'm top of the league now as well.
He's snuck in there.
Wowee. Paul 74. You're on 81. I'm on 82. Very tight now. So Paul was a couple of weeks before the end of the season. We could have a tie.
Yeah, I give a big shout out to Paul. He's over 50. He's got more wins than losses now. So, it was a big week for Paul. He's managed to get...
Mr. 53%.
Overall record above it. So, well done, Paul. Gold star to you.
Shout out, Paul. Yeah, great effort. We'll get to Fantasy Gameday Lineup in a minute, but just some of our highlighted bets from our Instagram post. So I had the Colts -2, which came in. Paul hit a ton of spreads this week. He had the Texans, the Browns, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, which all won. He had the over for the Cowboys and Giants game, and he had the Cowboys alternate spread at minus 29.5 points, which came in at plus 425. Great bet. I had a props treble of Kyle Phillips over 21.5 yards. Just a schemy little receiver and the concentrated passing attack in Tennessee. Dalton Schultz over 49.5 I had, which came in really late. And then Bijan over, I think it was 53 rushing yards. Again, I just thought he'd get featured. So that was a plus 495 prop treble. And as mentioned earlier, I had the Ravens defense plus 600 touchdown anytime, which, yeah, it came in incredibly early. It was a very pleasant surprise to just see that, 30 seconds into the game. It's like, oh, yeah, you've already won one of your bets for the week. Always a positive one. And go over, do winners and losers or fantasy game day?
Let's do winners and losers. Let's do it while
Already, I'll quickly think of some on our fly here. So I'll ask you to start here, Joe, then, because I haven't got any. So who's your winner of the week?
You know what? I'm going to give it to Dak Prescott. He gets a lot of shit in the media and everyone always piles on him. But I think people are finally, the second quarter of the season is, he's certainly looking like one of the top quarterbacks. And, if he continues playing that way, MVP shout is all we're up for if he carries on. I know they've got some tough games coming up, but if he can play like he has been, I just feel like, I'll give it to Dak. I'll give, you and Paul some love and give it to Dak.
Much appreciated. I will go with something we've talked about a lot on this show already, but another huge win, another huge game. Rookie of the year, CJ Stroud goes into Cincinnati against one of the hot teams, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and doesn't come short in any way. Yeah, breakout game, and we've got the MVP talk for CJ Stroud. Crushing it. Your loser of the week, Joe?
Oh, there's a lot to choose from, isn't there? I feel like it's a lot. There's a lot to choose from. Who am I going to go for? I'll go for the Falcons. I think it feels like they're bottoming out at the minute, just losing to the Cardinals. I know the Murray was back, but, that's the kind of game you got to win. They could still win the division just because they're in a terrible division, but it just feels like, they made a terrible decision with the quarterback. Is the head coach going to remain? Because everything else feels like there to be a good team, and I just feel like they've just, last few weeks it's bottomed out. But there's plenty of nominations for loser of the week. It's been not so great.
I'm going to go with someone that I think I might have given it once to before this season, maybe more than once. But it's just funny to see once again Bill Belichick. All he has to hope for this year is that they get the number one pick and Robert Kraft trusts him enough to develop Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever they decide to take him, because it isn't going to be Mac Jones in the future. It isn't going to be Bailey Zappi. I don't think it's going to be Bill Belichick. I was kind of hoping, because I'm cruel, that he'd get fired on the tarmac in Germany and he'd come home unemployed, but Robert Kraft is more human than I, so that didn't happen. But anytime we get to laugh at Bill Belichick, I will take it.
Feels like you're the winner of the week, Byron, with how Bill's been so terribly.
I'll take it, yeah. Got the FourFolds, got to laugh at Bill Belichick. Great week.
Yeah, no.
We'll take it. And we'll go over the Fantasy Game Day winning lineup. So I'm sure everybody knows at this point, Fantasy Game Day is a fantasy game app in the UK. Enter 5 lineups a week, $7.50 per lineup. PPR scoring, get to pick a captain. Use the promo code COVER, COVER, when you sign up, and you get a free play for coming through us. And it's a lot of fun. Only 5 lineups allowed per week, so you're not up against people max entering 150 lineups like your DraftKings and your FanDuels. Just a real fun way to play. It's for British players only to boost the game in the UK. Every week that prize pot goes up and up and up. The amount of people playing it goes up and up and up. And could well be in shout for CJ Stroud wasn't going to win it. They could be Rookie of the Year for the British NFL season, certainly. The winning lineup this week was Navy 8723. These people have very creative usernames. It was smashed 232.66, and they had a real smart start to their lineup. They had CD Lamb as captain and Dak Prescott as quarterback, just like we did. We had Rashad White as well. We basically had the same lineup for at least 3 players. They had Joe Mixon's 12.5 points. Tank Dell, always a good pick in these games, 18.9. Tyler Boyd, 19.7 with T. Higgins out, nice pick. Mark Andrews only got 6.4 for them, but One wide receiver spot we haven't mentioned yet, Keenan Allen, 40.5 points. So between Keenan Allen, 40.5, CeeDee Lamb, 79 points, and Dak Prescott, 37.86, smashed it. They could have squeezed out some more points at tight end, I guess, but you don't think Mark Andrews is only going to get 2 catches against the Browns. Great lineup, and getting Keenan Allen there is a week winner.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think we finished 13th, so we had a decent week. I think anyone who got Prescott and Lamb probably, was up there. I was actually like a bit nervous because I thought they might be taken out very early, but it certainly worked out. And I think, just the Keenan Allen picks probably like push them over everyone else if you get them free. It's, happy days.
Yeah, good for them. Congrats, Navy 8723. And all we've got left to do is cover Thursday Night Football, a massive one, a rare, big Thursday night game. We've got the Bengals going into Baltimore. The first game of the season was 27-3, 28-3. I think it's 28-3. Ravens crushed Cincinnati. Joe Burrow couldn't move. We expect better this week. The Ravens are minus 4-point favorites. What are you thinking, Joe, for this week?
You know what? I'm not quite sure because I think I would have gone Ravens all day long, but just how they performed against the Browns, it feels like, they're just their own worst enemy. And with both teams losing, it's sometimes like with these teams, I always feel like, the team who's like lost, they're like, okay, usually they got to put something together. But it's a big game for both teams because, if whichever team loses, obviously if the Ravens lose, they're not in a worse position than what the Bengals were, but it still puts them behind a lot of the teams. So I think it's hugely important for all of them because if obviously the Bengals lose there, they'll be 5-5 in a tough AFC playoff picture.
Yeah.
And if the Ravens lose, they'll be 6-4, but then they've lost that advantage of beating the Bengals, beating the Browns. Did it be the Steelers as well? All the way, so you've lost the advantage because you can't,
you haven't followed it up.
Yeah, you haven't followed it up when you should be winning at home against these teams. So I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm curious. I got a feeling Hendrickson's not playing. Just how the injury looked, I haven't actually checked, but he looked.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but short week injuries are always tough.
And I think that's massive because he's one of them. Again, he's one of my unappreciated players where even at the Saints, he will still have a big impact on games. He's not like a game wrecker like Garrett or TJ Watt every single game, but he can have them kind of games, and he's certainly gonna be a big mess when you're playing, the Ravens. So you say it was 4 points. I might go the Bengals. I feel like the Bengals need this a little bit more. I feel like if the Ravens had won against Browns, I'd have been more confident with the Bengals just because I feel like they need this. And I think but I'm going to go Bengals to cover and beat the Ravens by 1. Last minute touchdown. They're going to go for 2 points.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah. Jamar Chase guesses 2 points. If that happens now, it should be.
And the over-under is 46, by the way, for this game as well. So
it's always tricky AFC North because I always think, they should easily get that. But then when I saw that Ravens Browns one, I was like, they should easily be under that. And then it was, way over 60. So
T. Higgins is going to be out this game as well, just as
I'm going to go over just because how good. I know Burrow's he threw 2 interceptions, but he's still looking a lot better. So I think they're going to put some points on the board, and I think the Ravens, most of the time put at least 20 or so on. So I'm going to go over.
I think I'm going to lean the Bengals as well. Just again, they need it so much. If they don't win, this could be their season. With how tight that race is for the 7th playoff spot, how good the Texans look. Obviously, the Texans got their tiebreaker on Sunday. It feels like it's a must-win. Just looking at DraftKings as well, the money line is currently being bet 50-50. So
it is, It feels like that kind of game. And I hope it's just a good game because, like you said, there's been a lot of stinkers on Thursday Night Football. And poor Al, who I think's been, he's not been amazing this year.
No,
he needs a good game. He needs and it's getting to that time of the season where it feels like, these games matter now. Yeah. Where it's actually that kind of like this is the NFL. This is the fun stuff. But talk about the Bengals. I'm just looking at their fixtures coming up. They have got the Steelers twice, So if that's who you're against to get into the playoffs, I don't think it's the end of the road, but it's certainly a big dint. Especially, I think if they lose this, they're not getting the first seed from that division. I think that's what I'll
Certainly
say.
not. No.
So, but if they win, if they win it, then they'll be 6-4,
half a game back.
half a game.
Ravens have got their bye week to come. Bengals have already had theirs, obviously.
So yeah, they'll be 7-4. So it'll be, and yeah, the other teams are both 6-3 and playing each other. So one team will be also 6-4, and one will be 7-3. So it's it'll be super tight. So yeah, if the Bengals win, that makes it a hell of a lot more interesting and a lot tighter. So just hope for a fun game and an over.
Yeah, look forward to seeing what Charlie picks as well.
Yeah, nice steak.
Yeah, he must be talking to you. Cool. Well, that concludes our Week 10 review. Thursday Night Football Week 11 preview, and we'll be back in a couple of days to preview the rest of Week 11. Cheers, Joe, and hope you're enjoying your holidays, Paul.
Cheers.